What's up, everyone? Today we're going to cover a few topics surrounding the Ask the Developers Tears of the Kingdom Part 3. There was a lot of cool stuff in here, and man, once I started digging into it, I got really excited for everything that we have coming up, um, and everything that they kind of talked about. So yeah, Milkshake and I are going to dive into this real quick. We'll make sure to put um, some stuff on the screen as far as like the quotes and whatnot. All right, Milkshake. So you got to read a little bit of this. What do you think?
Dude, so there's so much stuff here, but I think initially, my first impression was that Breath of the Wild was basically a very dumbed down version of this game. Like this was what Breath of the Wild should have been, but because I think the developers, I can't find the exact quote, but the developers basically said that they had limitations on the Wii U because Breath of the Wild came out on the Wii U and the
Yeah.
Nintendo Switch. So they were basically developing a dumbed down version of the game on the Nintendo Switch, which is a horrible thing to do, like looking back, right? But so this game truly unlocked the potential of what Breath of the Wild could be.
Yeah, and what sucks is like it seems like reading through this, all of that intention was that we're getting in Tears of the Kingdom was there for Breath of the Wild. However, Breath of the Wild was a great game, and we're not going to knock it in any way because it was just so good. But we're getting the so much better version of it, right? So that's exciting. So real quickly, Dota says that they originally developed Breath of the Wild for the Wii U, and then we know that the Switch got announced, so they then ported it over. So it was pretty much a big port. They joke around about how Aonuma kept asking him, I want to be able to dig a hole here. I want to be able to do this and that. And the developers was like, oh my god, no! Like, please don't make us do that. Like, that's just too much. But one of the really cool things that they mentioned in this interview, right after talking about um, being held back, is that there are now caves in the mountains that existed in Breath of the Wild. Right. So now we have all of it's built off of Breath of the Wild map. So there's not really going to be anything new as far as the map footprint. However, we're going to have all these new places that we're going to be able to go and visit because of the ability to add more to this game. So now, one of the things that the developer said was there's caves in places that there wouldn't have been before. So now you're going to be climbing a cave, and you're going to be able to go back and see, like, or you're going to be climbing a mountain and be able to go back and be like, oh, there's a cave here that wasn't before. And then they talk about how this is triggering a want to go back and explore other places that you're like, oh, I wonder if there's a cave over there now. So that's going to be really fun to kind of go around. I'm excited, so
Yeah.
excited to be able to um, go back to all these places and discover these new caves.
So basically, you're gonna get like deja vu. Be like, wait, was there a cave here, or was it like, was that always there? And no, it wasn't. But
Yeah,
it's kind of cool to see it. Like, it's just a super developed version of what we had before. It's so sick.
yeah, exactly. And so with that, like all of that development, they started going off and talking about the technical parts about this. And being a software engineer, and Shake as well being a software engineer, we start to nerd out about this quite a bit. Um, so they mentioned, and I'll put it up on the screen because I don't know exactly the quote, but they started talking about how the scaling of the sky islands
Yeah, this
was
is
a
my
little bit
favorite.
tricky. Yeah, it was a little bit tricky because um, some of the ways to get from here to there in the sky was some platforms, and the platforms from the ground looked like just scattered pieces of sky trash or something. They said something along those lines.
It's like little dots in the sky.
Yeah, so they had to mess with the scaling a little bit to make it look right. Um, and then the
Yeah, but
same thing,
when you go up there, it's the same scale. Like it's
yeah,
in proper scale, but it's like a strictly a visual thing, which I don't even know how they did that.
yeah, and then like they were saying the same thing when you're in the sky and you look down at the villages below. Um, the way the difference looks from the sky, they had to scale all that. So that's really cool. That's really cool. I'm excited to see what they mean by like the way it looks. And I'm excited to kind of. I am a kind of a person where I like climbing the mountains and like just looking around. So I'm excited to get to the top of these places and just see, the map from high above. All right, so let's move on to the next thing that we want to talk about. Um, the I did forget one thing. They also talked about how the audio is going to change, like from when you go from sky to the surface, the audio was changing. So that's actually pretty interesting too. I don't know exactly what that means. If that means just like the what do you call it?
Does that mean the soundtrack, or does that mean like the actual sounds of the game?
I don't know. It wasn't super clear. So it could be one or the other. It could be both.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting. I don't know. Sound design is super cool, and I think that's really, really interesting to have.
And at what point does it change? Like at what point while you're ascending does it change? Like I'm not sure how that's gonna work.
Yeah, and that's what they talked about too. The developers asked like, okay, where's this line that this magic line that we need? So yeah, really interesting. A lot of work, and it's just crazy the amount of work that went into this game. And there's been a lot of people that have said this is Breath of the Wild 2.0, and I guess kind of is, but it's a bigger and better Breath of the Wild. And it's not just DLC; it's legit the better Breath of the Wild.
No, it's a whole storyline, yeah.
And better.
But this is what they were aiming to do, right? Like this is. I feel like they're like kids in a candy store. Like they finally have the hardware they need to do something like this, and they just went all out.
Yeah. And to think that they were able to do, like, this is like one of the most impressive games that I've ever seen. Like, just the mechanics and just everything that we've seen so far. Other than the graphics not being like as crazy as all the other ones, like no other games are able to do this. And it's seamless. They talk about how they wanted to be able to enter a house, and when you look out the windows of a house, everything's exactly the same as when you were standing right outside the house. Like if you were able to see through the window, you're seeing the map exactly as how. Like that's insane. The amount of effort.
There's no loading screens, right?
No loading screens from the sky to the surface, and I'm presumably underground.
That's so sick. That's so sick. I love that so much. I hated like walking into a house, it goes black. Then you walk in, like it's just like this whole thing. They totally removed that in this game.
Do you remember when like in the old games when you would walk into a house and you'd be like, oh, not this one, and you'd walk right back out. It was like two animations.
The worst.
So you had to go like
the worst.
Yeah. All right. So next up, let's see. So one other really huge thing that we've been talking about, and we've been speculating as fans, we've all thought and we all hoped for sure would come back, is dungeons. Dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom. Dungeons have returned, and I'm assuming when they talk about dungeons are returning, they mean the traditional sense of a dungeon. So we'll see exactly what this means. But the interviewer asks, we've only discussed the skies, but what about dungeons? This title has dungeons too, right? So Fujibayashi responds with, yes, we haven't talked about dungeons. They've changed from the previous game. For example, there is a dungeon that connects directly from Hyrule's surface. If you dive from the sky straight into the dungeon, you'll trigger an event. So before, and if you go down to Takizawa talks about how in Breath of the Wild, the dungeons were the divine beasts. And yes, those were a little bit closer to what we consider a dungeon, a classic Zelda dungeon, but I don't think anyone really thought that those were classic Zelda dungeons. They were just the closest thing we had in Breath of the Wild. Because shrines definitely weren't dungeons. They were like mini dungeons. So yeah, now hopefully we have dungeons. Hopefully we have what the traditional sense of a dungeon would be.
So I think there was a comment made by, I'm not sure, one of the developers said it, that they're going to be absolutely massive, like compared to what we're used to.
Yeah, let me see. Where does
was that Takizawa? I think.
Yeah, Takizawa. He says this time the dungeons are huge and they carry their own regional look and feel. So that kind of speaks to how many there might be, right? It also speaks to how they will look. So Yeah, I'm expecting there to be one for every region of um, the traditional map, Breath of the Wild map that we've seen. I don't remember exactly how many regions there are, but I expect there
Yeah, I
to
don't really
be
either.
quite a few dungeons. I don't think there will be 4. I think there will be more. Um, and he said they're
But
going to
they're
be
also
huge.
bigger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's kind of interesting because the divine beasts weren't like small. They had quite a bit of area to go run around in and stuff. So for them, for Takizawa to say that they're going to be huge, that gets me really excited because I want to know what
Yeah.
that means. What scale is huge? And in the trailer, in the third trailer, we saw that thing rising out from the Gerudo Desert. Well, presumably the Gerudo Desert because it was sand, but
Right.
we saw that
The
rising
castle.
out. Yeah, and it was really big.
Yeah.
Um, so I wonder if that's like the size that they're talking about. So we'll see.
Yeah, but
Um,
these guys have a different perception of huge. Like when I think of a big map, like like
yeah,
Tears of the Kingdom map is already like probably the biggest map in a video game I've ever experienced.
yeah. Breath of the
Like
Wild was huge, and now they added the sky and the underground. I don't know how big the underground is going to be. I don't know if underground is like strictly dungeons. I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like. Um,
we have
but yeah, it's
caves
huge.
too.
And caves,
Like
yeah.
which is does that really count as underground? I don't know. I guess, right?
Uh, not underground in the sense of what we think the underground is, right? Because the underground is below the surface. Caves are technically like in mountain or
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
mountainsides or whatever. So um, but yeah, the themes are probably going to be related more towards where the dungeons exist. So like the snow regions, the desert regions, um, the what do you call it? The jungle, beach
But
areas and stuff like
there's a
that.
few of those, right? So like there's a few snow areas, isn't there? So are we gonna have a dungeon per snow area? Like how is that gonna work?
I don't know. Like, I mean, because you have the whole Hyrule Field area. Like, I don't know if that's considered a region, or I don't know what the developers are considering regions right now. So we'll
Yeah, I
have to
don't know
see.
where they're drawing the border lines, but I guess we'll figure it out when the game drops. But
Yeah,
I'm very excited.
it's gonna be super fun, super exciting to see all these new things, and um, so yeah, that's kind of what we saw from the Ask the Developer. There's another one that comes out tomorrow, so we're also going to do a video on that. So we'll get that all put together for tomorrow. We are only 2 days away from this release. I'm super excited to play it. Um,
It's
so
insane.
it's going to be pretty crazy. So we'll get that ready for you tomorrow, and we'll have it out. Hopefully, they gave us some more big surprises. Um, at this point, there's no telling what they're going to drop on us because this game seems to be insane. So
Yeah, going into it, I really had like I didn't expect them to do so much. Like this is like actually insane.
yeah, it's going to be good. All right, guys. I'm Mr. Salty.
Milkshake.
As always, stay casual.